Hey everybody, welcome to episode 10 of Space Problems. I'm Ben,
And I'm Derek.
and we're joined again by Chris.
Hey, thanks for having me back, guys.
Always a pleasure having you back on the show, sir. With all of our massive audience, you're just in demand.
Hey, the people want what the people want.
He's trying to get rid of me, I know it.
Yeah, we're already moving to your replacement, Derek. I'm sorry. Anyways, let's get it down. Let's get down to business today. We're going to be talking about our reactions and our, I guess, opinions of season 1 of the Orville. And I know we're going to have a lot of Star Trek comparisons in this discussion, which is going to be obvious. I've only seen just a few episodes or a few seasons of TNG, so I'm not going to have a lot to compare to. So I'm more of just watching the Orville from kind of the outside. So Derek, I'm pretty sure you're going to have more to say with regards to Star Trek comparison.
Yeah, just for this clarity of the audience, I'm a big Star Trek fan. I've watched basically every episode that there's ever been, with the exception of Discovery. Full disclosure, I've watched about 5 episodes of Discovery, and I haven't finished the season of that yet. So, but otherwise, actually pretty deep knowledge of Star Trek.
Well, that's good because you've got the Star Trek knowledge. I always consider myself to be more of the casual Star Trek fan. My last roommate, when I was living in Kentucky, huge Star Trek fan, much like you, Derek. I enjoy Star Trek and things related to it, but I've never gotten deep into it. I enjoy it for what it is, the classic episodes, the really fun episodes. I'm more of the Star Trek movie fan, original crossover with Next Generation, and then even the new Kelvin timeline Star Trek movies, which I love for what they are and what they've done.
That's good. This will actually be really interesting then. I'm very interested to see what you guys think, given that you don't have as much Star Trek to draw on.
Yeah, I'm coming at this as more of just, but I can tell the obvious Star Trek influences just from what I've seen and known through pop culture about Star Trek. So I can see the obvious similarities. And I mean, for me, this is Seth MacFarlane, which I honestly didn't have a whole lot of hopes for the show when I first heard it was coming out. But first few episodes for me, it took a while for me to like really get into the show. But I feel like this is Seth MacFarlane, who he has a lot of money and he's always wanted to play Star Trek. And so I feel like almost every episode you can probably relate to a Star Trek episode or maybe even like a similar story. But
it's actually funny you bring that up because if you go to YouTube, you can actually see Seth MacFarlane as a teenager making a Star Trek fan film. Like not him in the process of making it, but there is clips of his Star Trek fan film he made as a teenager online, and it's hilarious.
Oh, I bet. Okay, I'm gonna have to check that out. Yeah, I mean, this does feel like...
not hilarious because Seth MacFarlane is being funny. It's hilarious because it's kind of adorable to watch him as a teenager try really hard to like passionately recreate Star Trek.
Well,
in his garage.
Those are the best bad films, is when they're made with heart and charm.
Those are the best, and you can see the true passion. And Seth MacFarlane has said over and over, ever since he started in the business with Family Guy, his obvious breakout, that he's wanted to do something like a Star Trek show. And apparently the Orville was in the works for years before Fox would even look at it and go, okay, we're going to give you a shot. And once it did, he just ran with it.
I mean, when you bring up Family Guy here, this is to my point about him playing Star Trek. It just feels like the Family Guy episode when Peter got a lot of money and then he just wanted to live Pee-wee's Playhouse. And that just feels like he's living. This is like a living rendition of that.
Right. When you started saying that with Peter on Family Guy, I just flashed the episode where Stewie got all the cast members of Next Generation, and we're just taking them around town, and they were just hamming it up as cast members, not as characters, but just as their own real life cast members, and it was just absolutely classic.
Yeah, I think this actually reminds me a great deal of a story I heard about Disney. I don't know how familiar you guys are with Treasure Planet.
Vaguely, it's been a while, but yeah, I remember the movie, and God, it's been a long time.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is it was directed by the directors that did Little Mermaid, I believe, and a few others. They basically, even since before Little Mermaid, they really wanted to do Treasure Planet in space, and they kept bringing up this whole Treasure Planet in space thing. And I guess they kept bugging Katzenberg about it, and he kind of would roll his eyes and like, oh my God, it's the stupid Treasure Island thing again.
Yeah, who's going to pay money to see this and everything?
Yeah, and apparently he was just totally convinced that it was a terrible idea, that there's no way they should do this. And it kept talking him into doing more movies. And finally they cornered him and he says, "Okay, fine. You give me one more movie and I'll let you do your space thing." And then he ended up doing it. But like I feel like that's kind of what happened with Seth MacFarlane.
Right. It's like you keep on
he
giving
kept saying like, can I do the Orville? And they were like, okay, well, why don't you give us one more Family Guy?
I don't even know what's out besides Family Guy that he's doing.
He's done a few things, but like I'm sure
I'm talking like still out. I mean, because I know like he had American Dad and the Cleveland Show, and
yeah. Well, that's what I'm saying. Like I feel like they were like, give us another Family Guy. Okay, here's American Dad. Now can I do the Orville? Well, give us another one. Okay, here's the Cleveland Show.
Well, he
you
also,
know what I mean? Like
he also tried his foray into sitcoms when he tried to do Dads with Seth Green and Giovanna Ribisi.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Yeah, wow, I completely forgot about that.
It's a deep cut, man.
It had its funny episodes, but yeah.
Right. And I think that he's done a brilliant job with it. And the best thing, and I actually wrote this on my notes right across the top, the best thing that I like about it is that it's not Peter Griffin in space.
Which it very well could have been. I think a lot.
Right, and I think that was what everybody's fear was. You see the Orville, it's like, okay, you see it, you see the preview for it. It's like, oh, it's like Star Trek from Seth MacFarlane. Oh, great, here we go. And I think that's what a lot of people thought. And
well,
yeah, I was kind of expecting it to be essentially like the Star Trek Family Guy skits.
Right.
You know, just long form. Well, hey, before we get any further, I think we should just step back and start with, what are all of our general takes on it? I mean, like, let's just get the general opinions out of the way. You know, let's start with you, Ben.
All right. It took me a while to like really like kind of get into the show a little bit, but I mean, every show kind of I feel like takes a while to get going, especially from a pilot episode. Mm-hmm. You have to give it a few episodes to get into it. I think Seth MacFarlane made the right choice, especially with casting, because I feel that every character is actually more interesting than him, and so there's not just this emphasis on, I'm Seth MacFarlane, look how Seth MacFarlane I am, Seth MacFarlane. The cast he has around him, like, you know, Norm Macdonald and even Rob Lowe, and I love the guy that plays Bortus. Like, Bortus is actually my favorite character of the show. So I love all the side characters more than actually like his character. But I mean, and I'm glad that he's more of like himself, Seth MacFarlane in space, not Peter Griffin in space. More like having Brian, I guess, in space. But as I said too, I feel like that every episode has almost a Star Trek episode or storyline equivalent. But I like the fact that the show actually addresses even modern day social issues, especially with the like social media planet.
That one is the one that kept me going and everything. It was about halfway through the season or just a little bit past, and I was like, okay, I was kind of getting to the point. I binge watched a lot of these, so it was like 2 or 3 episodes a night, and I got to that one and it was like, oh wow, okay. And it immediately, I was like, I'm in for the rest of the show. You know, that was my hook. It was deep in the season, but that was my hook.
Yeah, I have confidence. I think season 2 will get better. I just hope he doesn't run out of ideas and starts doing the Peter Griffin in space, or starts like doing voices or something ridiculous, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I was in preparing for this episode, I read a couple interviews, and you know, the first season is only 12 episodes, and he's kind of shooting for 12 to 14 for next season, and he's quoted as saying basically that he's going for quality of content, not to short it and just put out an episode just to have an episode. So I think that he's seen the power of what the show can be, and he's going to keep it going the direction that it is. And kind of maybe this is his way of, you know, making a name for himself outside of Family Guy. And I think that he really wants to steer clear of becoming that, and only putting out episodes that are going to intrigue people and keep people watching. And maybe get away from the Family Guy name. You're not going to say Seth MacFarlane, oh, he's the guy that did Family Guy. I think that maybe, you know, season 3 or season 4, if we get there, that you're going to say Seth MacFarlane. It's like, oh, yeah, he did that show, The Orville. And, oh, yeah, he did Family Guy back in the day, too. I think that this is really what he wants to make his name about.
Yeah, I think given where he's coming from with what he wants to do with the show, I actually have a lot to say about this, especially in relation to Star Trek. But before I get to that, I want to hear, Chris, your just overall thoughts on it.
I love it. I'm in. Every episode I watched from the pilot was done extremely well. Again, we're 400 years in the future. And I think I read that like even Star Trek Next Generation was like 300 years. So we're in timeline wise, I guess, if you want to say same universe, we're past that. But we're back to a very clean universe again. Everything's kind of new and kind of shiny. And what I liked, and I realized, I think actually, when I rewatched the first couple episodes again, I like the fact that they're on this mid-level science vessel or discovery vessel, whatever you want to call it. They're not a grandiose major ship. You know, we don't have to have all the bells and whistles. We're kind of just, you know, we're like following the average Joe crew around, and they're kind of like a bunch of misfits and everything. And they've even said about his character, Ed Mercer, is that this is his one and only chance. He's screwed up so much in the past that we're just going to give him command and see how he does with it. Whether he succeeds or fails, it's his one shot. And I like that. It's kind of a nice little anchoring point for his character. But overall, the show, like you said, Ben, it touches on very deep topics in the right way. It's not in your face. It's like, here's the plot. It's dealing with an issue like the social media planet, or the episode with Bortus's race with their daughter.
Yeah, I agree, and I like the fact that this doesn't have to look like the J.J. Abrams Kelvin timeline, but it looks like a better modernized version of the Next Generation, which I feel like he's homaging more. But that's just because I've only seen the Next Generation. I've seen a few episodes of the original series, but I feel like this is more touching with TNG from what I've seen.
I think I think the tech levels are very much the same. You've got, you know, everyone's using like, you know, sensor touchscreen keyboards and everything, but it's not overly techy. It's very rooted. It's very plain for being 400 years in the future.
Yeah, he's very clearly drawing on Next Generation for inspiration. I mean, it's very apparent from the design. For my overall thoughts on it, the series, I loved it. I'm just going to straight out say it. I honestly loved it for pretty much the whole thing. It's not without its faults, but, you know, the truth is that any first season of a show, it's going to take some time to get its land legs. So yeah. I'm going to cut it some slack.
Didn't TNG take a while?
Well, I was actually about to make that point. Like, you know, I heard some people complaining about it, and I had some friends I was talking about it, and they were like, oh, I don't know about this. Have you objectively gone back and rewatched Next Generation? The first season is a train wreck. I mean, it is an honest-to-God disaster.
Yeah,
I mean, I love TNG. I mean, I love Star Trek like nobody's business. But the first season, they're trying so many things, and so much of it is not working. It took them a little while to get their stuff right. I mean, like, the Tasha Yar character didn't work. I mean, they wrote her off the show there's a whole thing for why she was wrote off the show. But, like, quite frankly, her character just wasn't working in the first place. It took a while for Next Generation to settle. And it wasn't until season 3, really, that people started to kind of really see it with the gravity of, oh, this is Star Trek. And then by season 4, it was actually starting to be kind of its own thing. Like, this wasn't just a worthy successor to Kirk and Spock. This was kind of its own new thing. Honestly, a little bit more highbrow. By several seasons in, like, there was a sort of artistic quality to Star Trek, especially because the emphasis on things like Shakespeare from the captain and everything.
Yeah, I think you make a good point there. And when I watch Next Generation, when I catch it, or if I decide to go on a little bit of a binge, I get my highlighted episodes, the ones that I know are really good from the first couple seasons, and then I can jump into like a binge of watching 3, 4, and down the line. But the that's
usually what most
so
people
hard.
do.
First
season, if they know better. Yeah, I mean, there's some cringe-worthy episodes in there, and it's actually kind of problematic from a canon point of view, because there's a lot of things they try in those that actually get changed later. For instance, in several of the first episodes, they kind of imply that Deanna is a full telepath, you know, and they have her actually talking mind to mind with people, and then later they had to rewrite it so that she's just an empath. So, you know, I mean, no show is perfect.
Right, no show is perfect. And even looking at the Orville top to bottom, we got 12 episodes. There's nothing that kind of stayed true all the way through. And even to the one point, I mean, we can get to this when we talk about cast members if we go there, but the security officer, Yalara, if you watch the first episode and watch the second episode, there's a distinct facial feature that they added in for later episodes, and it's her eyebrows. If you watch the first episode, she's got no eyebrows. And I know they were trying to do it to make her look more alien, but it reviewed so poorly with the test audiences. They're like, well, we got to add eyebrows. We got to make her just a little bit more humanoid. And so actually for the rest of the season, she wore fake eyebrows because the actress shaved her eyebrows from basically audition and test roles, even through the pilot. And they're like, yeah, by the way, this doesn't test very well. Here's some fake eyebrows for the rest of it. So it's no season, no first seasons without fault, and no series was without fault for their whole entire run.
Right. So, I mean, I'm going to cut him a lot of slack. But to me, I'm actually more impressed with how fast it actually did start to feel like it got its legs. Because by about third or fourth episode, I really started to see some serious potential with the show. I enjoyed the pilot. I enjoyed the first and second episode, but I was kind of like, yeah, this is kind of light and fun. It's clearly TNG inspired, but I was kind of taking this like, this is more like a light-hearted Star Trek. They're kind of like doing a lot of the Star Trek-y tropes, but for the most part, they're keeping it light. And again, kind of back to the Family Guy in space thing. I thought it was just like, we're just here to have a good time. This is, more of a popcorn-y thing.
Right,
and
but they're not afraid to hit the emotional moments, though.
Well, that's what I noticed, though. I mean, like, it took episode 3 before when they got to the episode with Bortus and his race and, the birth of their daughter. That was the episode that really started to show me like, oh, wow, they're actually going TNG with this. They really are going to start tackling the questions about humanity.
They went deep with that episode, and they had you hooked the whole way through. That the decision at the end, you didn't know. Like, you're like, which way are they going to go?
What really impressed me about it and made me feel like this actually feels like Star Trek. Like, to me, this feels more in the spirit of what Star Trek was trying to do than a lot of the stuff that has come out in years. And it was because Star Trek was all about asking tough questions, but not necessarily trying to give you the answer. Like, it's there to make you think.
Or giving the answer that you wanted.
Right. Because they definitely, like, the one thing I really give Next Generation, and even the original series with Kirk and Spock, is there's a really good tendency in those shows to not wrap it up with a neat bow, like is normal in television. Because in television, it's like, oh, here's your Deus Ex Machina, here's the way that everybody ends up happy. There's a lot of episodes of Star Trek where it doesn't really pan out in a good way. Like, no one's really happy with the situation. There's a great episode, actually an earlier episode of Star Trek, The Next Generation, where they're on this pristine utopian planet. And Wesley trips and falls into a little garden area. And because he violated a space that you're not supposed to violate, he's sentenced to death.
Right. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I remember this episode now. Yeah. I know what you're talking about.
And basically that's how they maintain their utopian society, is they have absolute supreme corporal punishment.
Right. You screw up, you're dead. I mean, it's a very cut and dry, and there's no middle ground on this planet.
Exactly. And what's great is that then there's this huge moral dilemma of, do they respect the culture and let them actually execute Wesley? Or do they take Wesley and defy that culture and spit in the face of everything they believe in? And, Captain Picard has to wrestle with that the whole episode. And there's this great moment at the end of the episode where he's basically like, look, I respect that you do this way. We're not going to get in the way of your culture. And all that being said, I'm sorry, I can't let you kill him. We're just going to take him.
Right. Yeah. It's kind of, it's a nice respect thing, but still it's your way, but it's not our way. And it was, it was an accident. It was a complete mistake. And it's like, that may be your way for your people, but essentially he's not one of your people.
Yeah. But he also does this knowing that basically from this point on, that culture is going to have a terrible relationship with the Federation. Right. Not necessarily going to cause a war because of it, but close. I mean, like that, they just killed all chance of them being diplomatically tied to this group of people. And that's what I loved about the Bortus episode, is because it ended in that sort of, this isn't really great. This is sort of a weird.
It was a downer moment there at the end, because like I said, it was the episode that could have played easily to fans and even the way that modern society is going. But it was like, you know what? You don't always get what you want, and not everything's wrapped up nicely the way that you want it.
Well, and I love that it treats a hard moral question like a hard moral question. And I know that sounds silly, but especially given the society I see on the internet nowadays, everybody treats it like their view is so obviously right. And what I like about this is that it actually has an intellectual discussion about the issue. And when you hear the compelling arguments on both sides, you realize this is quite difficult. Like there are compelling arguments on both sides.
And there is no one right or wrong answer. And it's right for this group of people, but that's not necessarily the way that everybody has to go. And that's kind of the way they left it. It's like, this is your culture, your race, and all that, and that's fine for you, but we can't allow our influences and our way of culture and everything to influence you. I mean, they tried so hard, and in the end, it ended the way it did.
Yeah,
right.
All of this reminds me of the social media episode, except that he made the decision to try to stay hidden. I think, didn't he get one person's influence down below, but he didn't want to interrupt. They just to try to get what's his name from being, because he was like going on an apology tour on the social media.
Oh yeah.
And,
because he was basically, if he got downvoted enough, they'd lobotomize him.
Right, and it played into the media as well, because the media played a big role of like painting him as a villain.
Oh yeah, I thought that episode was incredibly relevant with social media and the idea of perception. That's perception as truth.
Yeah, perception is truth. Exactly. Yeah, it doesn't matter exactly that it was a mistake and a poor error in judgment. It was, you were caught on social media. You got caught in a viral video,
and he didn't know
violating the statute, and that's all that anybody knows. They didn't know anything about him. He wasn't even supposed to be there.
Yeah.
Well, and I thought one of the most clever points they made in that episode was actually how they helped him by flooding the thing with, but he's actually a veteran and he loves dogs, and like, yeah, here's all these great things about him, and it really, that said a great deal.
Trying to sway the perception the other way, and that's what social media and the society today is all about. It's that immediate. It's that what's going on right now. It doesn't matter what has been done, but it's like what's in your face right now. That's what you're going to judge it on. Forget 5 minutes ago. It's right now. It's right now. It's right now. It's the immediate effect of it.
And that's, so I guess all I'm getting at is to me, I was very, very, very pleased with how this show really felt like it wasn't going to be Star Trek in space. It really feels like it's trying to do what made Next Generation special, which is be a more lighthearted thing. Like, okay, so maybe they're not going to take themselves as artistically serious as Next Generation did, and be a little bit more lighthearted and fun, but they're still going to ask these big questions about humanity, like basically do what science fiction is supposed to do, which is make us think about the possibilities and everything. And I think that's fantastic. But the third and fourth episode in particular, because the fourth episode's when they discover the city and the ship, and those two episodes, from that point on, I was just utterly hooked. I was like, okay, I'm in. My biggest complaint is simply that just the humor, I still feel like they're feeling that out.
Yeah, but they didn't go overboard with complete, Seth MacFarlane. They didn't go full Seth MacFarlane.
No, I mean, all I'm getting at is I'm not saying the humor is bad. It's just I don't feel like they've quite found the right tone yet.
Right. Because
some of the humor feels really out of place with the rest of the show. But then, man, when they get the humor right, like some of it can be really funny.
Yeah.
Like there are some moments I was honestly laughing out loud.
It had its moments.
It had its moments, but like there's some moments where I'm just like, okay, that was just dumb. I remember one time in particular that I really liked where I think it was actually the episode where they were in the ship, the city in the ship, and they were disguised. It was episode 4.
Right.
But I really loved this one little moment. It's such a small moment, but I love the moment where they're trying to get into the city hall or whatever, and they go up to the guard, and Seth MacFarlane's character is suddenly like, "Hey, don't you remember? It's me."
Oh yeah, it's like, "Oh hey, it's Scott from such and such. That's been forever." And the guy's like, "What?"
And then they knock him out, and then he grabs him and he goes, and he's like pretending to hug him, and he goes, "That's so good to see you." I love that he just kept it going even after they'd already knocked the guy out. It shouldn't be as funny as it is, but the way it played out was just
right. And that's the balance that if they could keep it like that, and I mean, but the thing is, there's nothing wrong with humor spikes and you know, in reality and lower points too. And I think that the
Oh
up and
no.
down with it is actually working really well for them. So you're not getting the same level of humor or the same level of seriousness in every episode. You've got those spikes, and that they're apt and poignant for the episode that they're in.
And I think people need to remember, because I've heard a lot of people, again, bringing this back to Next Generation, uh, you know, they're like, oh, well, this has more jokes. Honestly, if you go back and watch The Next Generation, there's plenty of jokes.
Oh, there's
You know,
tons.
there's a lot
Yeah.
of humor in it still.
And
I mean,
it might
the
be
only,
more, it might be more dry and subtle
yeah,
in Next Generation. And I think that has to do with, again, the casting and actually the time of when it was made.
true.
You know,
I think the biggest difference between the humor of this and Next Generation is simply the fact that Seth MacFarlane is willing to get dirtier with his humor. And part of that's probably just a cultural thing, because in the 90s we still weren't really talking about sex openly on television.
right now
You
it's
know,
more, it's okay to do it, and the jokes are relevant for the time that we're living in right now.
Well, for me, for what helps the humor is you get an indication that the crew really does like have chemistry together. They really do work well together,
They
and
do,
even
yeah.
that they support each other. Like when they were having karaoke and Boris was about to sing "My Heart Will Go On." I mean, he didn't actually sing.
I gotta admit, I felt so robbed at that moment.
Oh, I know, but that was
yeah,
that was
it's
the
like one of those,
perfect
like,
joke. It's that it hit a point for me on that. I was like, oh, that's good. I like that they didn't
Yeah,
go with
It
it.
was good.
it was like Boris
Well,
is going up and he's going to sing what?
Just
Okay.
their facial
I think
reactions
that
to that.
I think that the thing that's so great about that is what they're trying to do the same thing. It's again a great characteristic of good Star Trek, which is making the crew care about each other. They like to be around each other. It's just refreshing to see a group of people that just genuinely like spending time with each other.
Right, and you know, they enjoy work. You know, they enjoy going to work, and it's a. I mean, come on, if you had that job, you'd want the same thing, because what they're doing, and they actually talk about this in one of the episodes. They're star charting. They're charting, you know, unexplored space, and while that may seem tedious and boring as all heck, they're trying to inject the humor. Scott Grimes' character is the helmsman and everything. He's, you know, he's the rogue guy that was going to be potentially riding his desk for, you know, the rest of his whole career. But he comes in and he's, you know, he's kind of a flyboy, and he's paired up with this other guy that we come to find out maybe isn't in the right position as a helmsman. Maybe he's better served as, you know, what he comes out to be, an engineer. So I mean, it's there's a good play that they work well together, but they're also two totally dynamic opposites of each other in their backstories.
I like the relatable humor though too, because even though it is in space, there's still that relatable humor that they are going to work every day. Like the like the guy that's in the elevator guy that always wants to chat.
Yeah,
I love that guy.
I feel it's very similar to like Friends, like the Toby guy calling Chandler Toby. Like he just sees that guy in the elevator all the time, and he's not really mean to you. He's just one of those guys you're just like, it's so weird to be around him.
Well, but I think that's one of the great things about this is that it's still an office show. It's still a show about like going to work with your coworkers, and they keep that grounded in that. It just so happens that their work is in space.
right. You know, this could have easily been another The Office show and everything. It could have been any kind of ship. It could not be set in the future, but it still works because while every character is dynamic in their own rights, some of them being aliens and some of them having different pasts, they all work really well together. I mean, think about the commander and the first officer. They're husband and ex-wife.
I thought that was going to get real old real quick, but I got to admit, I actually really enjoyed their dynamic.
It was heavy in the first episode, and you know, I think that was trying to set the dynamic for the two of them, and it kind of played out in the middle. And then the episode where Rob Lowe's character comes back and is on the ship was classic because I felt like it wrapped up that story really, really well.
Yeah, that he was actually excreting pheromones, and that it may not have been her fault, and so you kind of feel like you should forgive her a little bit.
Well, I like the fact that it kind of was left sort of ambiguous, you know, like
right.
Could have been
They
that.
didn't
It could
fully
have just
answer
been the fact that she genuinely, you know, felt lonely in the relationship and all that.
Yeah, right.
But I love the fact that throughout the entire thing, even with their bickering, even with all of their past relationship history, you never get the sense that they don't care about each other. I think that's very hard to pull off with a character dynamic like this, because it could easily come off like they just hate each other, or one hates the other, or something like that. But they had a lot of these little subtle moments that showed that they both still cared about each other. Like maybe
Yeah.
they're not in love, maybe they're not going to get back together, but they still care about what happens to the other person. I think that helps a lot.
They care about each other's lives, whether they're the significant part of it or not. They, like you said, they care about what their own futures are, and they're going to do everything they can to help further their futures.
Yeah, they're and to that when you said they're going to help further their futures, I mean that's even explained too at the beginning, like that she still cares about him because she got him the job. She vouched for him to be captain.
Right, and she was willing to give up her first officer's position if it wasn't going to work. And I think that throughout the first episode that they saw, it's like, hey, we can put this aside, and in a strange way, we can make it work for us, and then we can actually end up working together. I thought that the playing off, it's like, hey, we're trying to buy some time, roll with me on this and everything. It's like, oh yeah, by the way, since you're here, let's get your opinion on this.
Yeah, I really, from the previews, I was actually very nervous about where they were going with Seth MacFarlane's character Ed, because they made it seem like he was just kind of a moron in the previews, because they just were showing the clips about how, this is his last chance and everything. But what I like about it was the fact that when you watch the show, it's really clear that he's a good officer who just basically just had a really difficult time in his personal life and let his career suffer because of it.
And the best part about him being the officer and the commander of that ship is that he cares about his people and their development. He doesn't want the status quo. He wants, and you can see it, he wants these people that are on, that are under his command to succeed with him or without him, on their own and as part of a crew.
Right. Well, he made that one pilot the science officer.
And he pushed for that to happen, which was great.
Yeah, and I thought that was absolutely, it's like, we're gonna put you in this, you're gonna do it, and we're all behind you, and we believe in you, whether you see it or not. You're gonna do this, and you're gonna be great at it.
Yeah, and I mean, I think all the characters here are really well written. There's clearly a lot of time that was spent on all of them. I'm really, I'm kind of torn. My favorite is either Alara, this security officer, or why am I blanking on his name? The robot.
Oh, I forgot.
Isaac. Isaac is. But, well, Isaac is weird because, okay, if we're gonna, the obviously parallels are between Star Trek and the Orville and everything.
So he's their Data.
He's their Data, but I also get a little bit of Spock in him, because while he's trying to learn on that level, it's kind of like Spock's logic, which is also mirrored in Data as well. And it just, it's hilarious. The running jokes between him and oh gosh, Scott Grimes, the helmsman, I can't remember his name, when they're playing practical jokes on each other, and Isaac comes in dressed as Mr. Potato Head, is absolutely classic. And then he pulls the rebound joke on him, and he gets out of bed and he falls over because Isaac's chopped his leg off. And it's like, okay, you get the idea, but you took it too far. It's like
I think my favorite interaction by far between any cast member through the entire season was that moment where they had talked about getting a cat on the bridge, and suddenly like it cuts over to like Isaac over there like petting Gordon.
Yeah, he just kind of like rolled over,
like,
just like stroking his
Are
head.
we bonding? Because he talked about like petting is how you connect with an inferior animal, and I think that's the thing that really worked for me, was the fact that, because it would be very easy to do just another Spock and another Data.
Well, and,
right,
and even Isaac with being a robot,
actually having a physical robot, not an android, a physical robot from a race of robots.
But he still cares, because he even sacrificed not really himself but his own time. Like he's like, I won't age. I can go and I can spend 1,000 years in this other time and dimension.
Oh, that's right, yeah. And he also has a self-sacrifice and a learning process when he and the doctor's 2 kids are stranded on that planet. He has to basically become a human parent to these 2 scared kids.
That was a good episode.
That was a great episode. I started rewatching this not too long ago, and I'm only on episode 3 again, but I really want to go through and watch it again. And I think that it's a show that is rewatchable. It's because you pick up on the humor is there to keep you laughing. The topics are on point, and the characters are so relatable.
Yeah, I'm going to buy it when it releases.
I agree. I'll do the same. But the point I was going to make about Isaac was, I think what really makes him work was the fact that actually his sort of weird superiority complex, I think, is actually what makes the character work better than if they'd have just done a Data or a Spock again. I think it's really fascinating that he comes from a race of robots who see all this as almost more of a curiosity.
Right.
Like they kind of see humanity more as like a, well, this is interesting.
It's more like a science experiment. They actually talk about that in his introduction. It's like, oh, I actually love Seth MacFarlane's, right? Isn't your species known to be incredibly racist and everything like that? And it's like, well, we just deem everything that's not up to our level of superiority to be inferior. And
well, and I like the fact that to him, like it's a very robotic response. I mean, yes, like on a surface level, we hear it and it's like, oh yeah, that's actually really racist and very demeaning. But a robot who's completely logical and who has nothing but a machine be like, well, we are superior in strength and intelligence and everything else. So yeah, you're an inferior specimen, and they don't see what's wrong with that.
The other thing I like about Isaac is his appearance. He's not completely mechanical, robotic looking and around that. He's got the kind of 50s/60s Lost in Space look to him. It's very
the very shiny like aluminum foil look.
Right. It's almost cartoony to a point, but it works. The blank expression is what I thought of first of all when I saw like the no mouth and just the two eyes was like, oh, and he's able to emote much like C-3PO does in the Star Wars movies. It's the same expression all the time, but through his body movements and what he says, he's able to emote what he's thinking with almost true emotions behind it, not just robotic programming to it.
Yeah,
in a weird way.
He does seem to have the same posture as C-3PO.
That's true. Yeah, he kind of walks like C-3PO.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about the arms like right now.
Kind of the C-3PO, like I said, Lost in Space. I can't remember the robot from Lost in Space, but the kind of very mechanical movement to it.
Was it Robbie the robot?
Yeah, I think you're right. Wow, I can't believe I can't think about that.
They actually have a new Lost in Space coming out on Netflix. That's a sidebar.
That's right.
I don't know if you guys saw the trailer, but check it out if you haven't.
I did. I'm intrigued. I think that's why it's fresh in my head.
Well, maybe we'll have to do an episode on that. I've got so much stuff.
Oh,
I have
I'm
to
sorry.
Like, catch up.
I'm sorry. I just double checked. Robbie the robot is from Forbidden Planet. But he was the inspiration. He was the inspiration for the Lost in Space robot, so that's why I messed up. I'm sorry. Sorry, internet.
That's fine. You'll get 16 hate comments for all the people listening.
I love those 16 people.
So do I. Come on, guys. Spread the word. Tell your friends.
Yeah, listen to these three guys talk about a TV show.
A good TV show, to be fair.
No, yeah, as I said, I'm going to support it. I said, even though I pay for the non-commercial Hulu plan, I'm still going to purchase the Blu-rays when they release.
Which is very good. I'm a big supporter of, support the things you like.
I'm a big fan of that too. If I like something, I buy it. I like having it. I like being able to walk over to my TV and not have to worry about connecting and just throw a movie in, just pressing that play button. There's something old school about it that I just love.
I really love having physical copies, but more because I like a lot of obscure stuff as well. And it's just, I hate the fact that streaming is like, here's all the titles that 80% of the population really likes. And it's like, well, okay, but I can't find any classic movies or...
Yeah, we sound like a bunch of old people right now, a bunch of guys in their 30s going, even though we're talking about futuristic space stuff, it's like,
can those kids get off my lawn?
I like giving those physical copies.
Yeah, I mean, come on. I still have VHS. I have a functioning VCR that I actually use on a regular basis.
No, I have
wow.
I still even if there's a bunch of bad movies on Amazon Prime. I'm a big I love bad B movies, but I still buy them. I still have I have one of my Blu-rays is actually a transfer from a PAL Betamax SP.
Oh my gosh, what is it?
Deadly Prey.
Oh, okay.
I
was like, what are you talking about?
Oh yeah, it's.
Well, sometimes they won't update things in format, and it drives me crazy.
It drives me absolutely crazy.
I mean,
there's several movies that I have on DVD that they refuse to bring out on Blu-ray.
Well, this one even says on the back of it, there's a sticker that says this is the best. Like we've transferred this from the best possible source we can. So I guess there's not really. They don't have a 16 or a 32.
It's like my rip of the Star Wars Holiday Special. It was ripped
Yeah.
off. It was ripped off of a rip. So you're talking a double rip on VHS. So VHS to VHS,
I
and
don't
then
think
to DVD.
I don't even think
Oof.
there's a way to even buy that legitimately anyway. So
Nope,
Oh
there's
no,
not.
no, no. Disney has helped keep
But
George's legacy of burying that thing alive.
yeah,
but it is on YouTube, and anybody can watch it and
Yeah.
be highly disappointed.
yeah, you just want to whip stir, whip stir.
No, I just like to gouge my eyes out every time I watch it.
Why do you have
And this
it?
is coming
then?
from a true Star Wars fan. I seriously just want to rip my
Why do you
eyeballs
have
out.
it then? It's just like it makes you want to gouge your eyes out, but you have to have it. So much
There's
so
a
you watch a rip
nostalgia.
of a rip of a rip.
Yeah,
There
there's
is a
something.
nostalgia to it. There's, I mean, the fact that it's like Boba Fett's first appearance, and
Right.
you know,
I mean, come on. If you can see Mark Hamill singing and everything, I mean, that's
with some
very
really
impressive.
bad makeup.
Really bad makeup. And this is the guy that's getting his star on the Walk of Fame, ladies and gentlemen.
He deserves it. He deserves it just for the Joker.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was going to say.
But getting back on track to the Orville.
Yeah, can we whip through some of
Uh,
the other characters that we like and don't like?
Yeah,
maybe?
I was gonna say, like, I would have just, we talked about Isaac, but I wanted to talk about Alara because I think she's like I said, it was tied for my favorite, but I really liked her. I think she's one of the stronger characters in the whole series.
Pun intended on that one?
Yeah.
No, actually, happy accident. But I really loved the fact that she was so physically strong, and there's a lot of ways they could have portrayed her character, because they could have portrayed her as like this really tough, hard, warrior kind of person.
Right. She's
But I like
physically
the fact
stronger
that-
than everybody else, but emotionally not as strong or not as confident. But
Well,
that's
she's
why
also the youngest. I mean,
And she's young.
She's
Yeah.
23. I mean, so they're like, aren't you a little young to be a security officer? And the best thing about it is that she doesn't feel strong because she comes from a planet. And I love the explanation. They're basically a planet of hypergravity. So everybody on their planet is or would be physically strong if they're not on their own planet.
Yeah, I thought that was brilliant. I thought
Yeah.
the fact that she doesn't feel like she's superhumanly strong was a
It's
real
just
asset.
it's natural to her. Which
And
is
I love the
pretty-
fact that she when she talks about the fact that she has trouble finding a boyfriend because they're intimidated by her strength, she's not saying that in a really like bitter way. It's just this is just the way it is.
yeah, or condescending. She's actually really disappointed with that. I really did like her episode where, again, getting back to Seth MacFarlane and how he cares about his crew members, and how the one episode where he was actually, or she was in a training simulation and didn't even realize.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I thought that was kind of lame because parts of it I think are kind of lame, but I really appreciated why he put her through it and everything. But the whole, I still kind of felt like that it was all a dream or it was all a simulation thing at the end. I
It
still
did
had that
feel
feeling.
like a bit of a cop out of the it's all a dream thing, but yeah.
But-
There's
but
no
in a
way to
way-
avoid that.
But in a way, it was actually conceptually a great idea. I just think that maybe a little bit, and the fact that we don't get that explanation until the end kind of has you playing that way overall. But looking back on it, it's like, hey, it worked for what it was.
Yeah. I agree.
And her character does end up being the recipient of probably one of the best running gags through the whole show, in my opinion. This is coming from Seth MacFarlane's mouth or like that, where he's always got a trouble opening a door, finding his way through a wall or something like that. It's like, hey, Alara, can you open this jar of pickles for me?
I do love the fact that he said that every single time.
It was
I thought
absolutely
that
hilarious.
would get old, but it's really funny.
And the first episode is the best when he uses it. It's like, do you want to open this jar of pickles for me? And she knocks down the whole entire door with the wall attached, and he just looks at her and goes, I listened it for you.
I also love, like I said, not all the humor works, but there are subtle moments that I really like. I actually really like some of the uncomfortable humor. Like there's a really good gag where they're all in the elevator heading up on the ship, the city and the ship, and he's making awkward small talk.
Oh, yeah. It's like, what else are you going to do? This massive, giant elevator. It's like,
But
yeah,
I love the
so-
fact that they point out those little things though, because it's very common in science fiction to just and just media in general that you cut all of the boring parts out.
right.
They don't
There's
show
no,
people
there is
going
no,
from this place to that place. That's boring. They're just walking.
right.
Right, but
There's
no-
one
you need
thing
that.
that never ceases to amaze me. And I know that this is just not interesting or in between television and movies and around that, but you never see anybody going to the bathroom. But in the first episode, they talk about it at least. It's like, hey, I'm just on my way to the bathroom. Nobody goes to the bathroom in cinema, ever.
I was reading up on Hayao Miyazaki recently, and I thought one thing was really amazing because they were talking about how good his characters were and how real his characters felt, and empathetic. And I came across this interview with him, and essentially he made a point about how in his films he really likes to show people doing everyday things.
And that's
because
relatable. I
because
mean,
the thing is that there's a weird empathy that you get from, and you learn a great deal about your character, about that person, just by seeing them do their everyday routine and letting things breathe. Like sometimes you can actually connect with a character way more when nothing's happening, when they're just sitting on a train going to a place or something like that. I think that's amazing.
I agree. Do you have anything more to add with your security officer character here, or do we need what's her name?
Laura.
Alara.
Alara,
I keep
Laura
wanting to
Katan.
say, like Alana or Alara. Yeah, just okay. I'm still like I don't have like written down the characters' names in front of me. I'm just going mostly off memory here.
I have a web page up with it.
Oh yeah, see, I've got the actors' names in front of me. I did not write down their character names, so I kind of shot myself in the foot on that one.
No, it's all good. But my favorite, and I still don't know the actor's name. Probably my favorite character is Bortus. I find his character hilarious.
Peter McCone.
Sure.
Yeah, that's the actor's name.
And really, he's. I looked up because I was looking up like what everybody had done in the past, like what their backgrounds is and everything. And he's the one that actually there's not a whole lot that stood out to me. He's kind of the unknown factor. Him and Alara as well is that they're the kind of unknown, haven't really done a whole lot of name things in the past. I mean, everybody else has a top billing thing that stands out.
Yeah, the doctor. She was in Castle.
The doctor.
Yeah, the doctor. She was in the show.
Yeah, she was in Castle. She was also on Star Trek Deep Space Nine. As well, there's a lot of Star Trek connections in casting,
especially behind the scenes.
And behind the scenes,
the crew, there's quite a few Star Trek connections.
Yeah, the directors, especially one of the directors, he directed 3 or 4 episodes of the Orville, but he was one of the big producers on Star Trek Generations, First Contact, and The Next Generation. And actually, one of the directors for one episode, it's the episode Priya, the one with Charlize Theron, is Jonathan Frakes, good old Riker from The Next Generation.
And Riker, Jonathan Frakes actually directed Star Trek First Contact and some of the movies.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, he did. And I like that. Seth MacFarlane's got his fingers in a lot of different areas, and he's able to pull people. I mean, he got Jon Favreau to direct the pilot, and with his influence, and he's also a major consultant on a lot of the he's like the technical and special consultant for most of the episodes, but his directing power and his directing vision, I think, is what's really helping the tone of the show, especially from the pilot straight out.
Yeah, you could tell Seth MacFarlane, he called in his favors on this one. Yeah. And I'm glad he did. It really shows. It's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I know Adrienne Palicki, I think that's her name, but I liked her. I know her from John Wick because she was Perkins in the first John Wick. And then, what do you guys think about?
She was also in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. She was going to be the star of the failed Wonder Woman reboot. Also did Friday Night Lights and the reboot of Red Dawn, which I loved her in that movie. She's a kind of a secondary minor character, but I think that for me, that's where I remember her from. But I liked her.
One of the better things about that movie. There's not a lot of good things about that movie, but
it's in my genre of wheelhouse movies that I like. So it's up there. It's on my shelf. So
yeah, got some Invasion USA.
Basically, yeah.
Chuck Norris.
It's not as good as the original.
I really enjoyed the original, but the remake was sort of like.
Yeah. They tried to update it. I can see where you're coming from. They try to update it too much, but again, we're getting off topic here. We can save that for another day.
It happens.
We could do a whole reboot episode that would I think we'd be trashing most of them, but it'd be fun.
Oh, it's always fun. So what do you guys think? What about, unless you're still going
but getting back to Bortus.
Bortus, okay, yeah.
And the obvious thing that's great about him is that his species is all male. It's a great character set, is the fact that everybody's male.
And if you're a female, you're changed to male, except for the one that was she was like a famous writer, but she was under a pseudonym. That
Yeah,
Well, she kept it hidden. I mean, like,
Yeah,
the only reason she wasn't was because they defied their culture.
you're right, right.
right. Her parents kind of took her away, but I like the fact that she ended up being like the essentially the best thing I can think of is the Gandhi of their species, but they did it in exile.
Yeah, it's a really their species is an interesting one to examine. You know, there's a lot of really interesting concepts with Bortus's species in general, and I particularly like the idea that this sort of addresses kind of the way a majority treats a minority, and this is being in a very extreme case where the minority is like one in however many hundred or thousand. I mean, I don't.
Yeah.
Did they say how often it happened?
They did, and I can't remember.
Yeah, I can't remember either.
I really love the relationship between him and his. What do they call the partnership? His husband.
Yeah, I don't know.
Did they give it a name? Like, I don't know. I'm just saying for like the sake of the show. I don't know.
Right, yeah, I
the
don't
culture
remember.
had
Yeah,
a name
I think
for
they.
it.
I think.
But his husband, essentially.
Yeah.
I really loved what they did with their relationship. I actually thought that was really good. I like the fact that they showed that they genuinely cared about each other, but it wasn't perfect.
Yeah.
Right.
But
And,
did they just call him his mate, or I don't even remember?
Yes, mate. That's it.
Oh, that was it.
That's it, mate. Yeah.
That was.
And
I
I
was
love
blanking.
the actor that portrays his mate. Clyden is the character's name. But I love the actor behind him, and he's actually I can't remember his name right off the top of my head, but he starred in Walking Dead for a few seasons, and he was actually one of the characters when he died on Walking Dead that I really hated to see him go. I love him, and I think he's a very powerful actor, and to see him in this role is wonderful. Even behind the makeup, it's still wonderful.
Well, he did an amazing job because Clyden is very clear to me. Like his character has very little screen time, but I remember everything about that character vividly because he portrays him so well.
Yeah, he's got pretty good characterization just for a minor character, because he is memorable.
I think actually my favorite interaction with them was just a little bit where Clyden was complaining about how much Bortus, worked, about how much time he spent on the job.
Right.
Such a minor exchange, but
is that where he goes in the living room and like basically asks the ship, I'm depressed. What kind of food? It's like traditionally.
Yeah, I think that was the same episode. Yeah.
But actually, that dynamic actually brings an interesting overall ship dynamic or setting dynamic. Is the fact that there's families on this ship. It's not just the crew as a family, but there's families on it. I mean, you got Clyden and his mate. The doctor's got her kids on the ship as well, and I think that's an interesting dynamic that we saw it a little bit in Next Generation, but I mean, obviously with Dr. Crusher and Wesley, but you didn't see a whole lot of, nobody had their wife, nobody had their little kids running around for the most part, at least from what I can remember. But it's an interesting dynamic that I think is actually, it works really well because you have the true family dynamic and then you have the crew family dynamic.
What I think is most fascinating about it is with Star Trek, Next Generation was the first one where they explored the idea of this being a family ship, because in the original Star Trek, it's very much like a military ship. It's like a submarine. The only people on there are the crew. That's it. And then with Next Generation, this is a flagship, but it's also a family ship. People are allowed to bring their entire families on board. But for the most part, they mostly just played all of the family stuff as sort of like, this is how it gets in the way of the ship.
Family really shouldn't be here. They don't belong here. This is not the place for them, but we still have them.
It was kind of like highlighting like how uncomfortable Picard was around children, or like the fact that a lot of these more career Starfleet people are just not sure what to do because suddenly kids will like run out into the hallway and they're like, hey, you shouldn't do that. This is a ship. Be respectful. And they had a few moments where they'd kind of explore a little bit. Like I remember there was a very short-lived kind of storyline between O'Brien and Keiko and like their sort of relationship problems. They went into it actually way more in Deep Space Nine. Barely touched on it Next Generation. But to me, that's the more fascinating thing that I think they're exploring here in the Orville, which is they never talked about how being in Starfleet affects the family. Right. Like I really loved the idea that Bortus, and his mate were having trouble with how much time he's spending as an officer. Like that just doesn't come up in Next Generation. It's like there's this sort of assumption, and this is just for Star Trek in general, like, and this is part of Gene Roddenberry's vision, but there's this sort of assumption that Starfleet is perfect and that it's amazing and it's a higher calling and that to be in Starfleet is this amazing thing. So no one would dare question being in Starfleet or anything like that. I mean, they finally ended up addressing it later with the idea of the Maquis, but I just like the fact that in this one, there's sort of like just this very human natural reaction of, well, where are you? I want to spend more time with you. Why do you have to be on the bridge so much?
Yeah, relationships seem to be in between crew members. I don't know how much that was touched on in TNG or previous ones, but between crew members. I mean, hell, you even have, what's his name, Norm Macdonald as Yaphet, and he's hitting on the doctor.
All the time, yeah. Which I just think is absolutely hilarious.
It was kind of annoying to me at first, but it actually went somewhere good.
Yeah.
I ended up liking Yaphet by the end. He kind of got on my nerves in the first few episodes. But...
Well, he wasn't really, I don't know and I think that I felt the same way. Then I realized the fact that like why he was annoying and everything, and nothing against Norm Macdonald. I like him, but when Seth MacFarlane runs through him and you first hear his voice and everything like that, and he runs through him, it's like, hey, sorry about that. And he's like, oh, don't worry about it. It's like, oh, great, Norm Macdonald's in this. Where are they going to go with this? It was like, oh my God, Norm Macdonald and a Seth MacFarlane thing. Here we go. Here's the Family Guy in space thing. I was hoping that it wouldn't be doing that. But then they kind of developed his character a little bit more and actually said that he's got a purpose and he's got real emotions and feelings, and he's hitting on this doctor all the time, but he's genuine about it. He's not just trying to hit on her for the sake of, hitting on her for the storyline. He's genuine about it. He really wants this to happen, and it worked, in my opinion. They developed it right.
Yeah, I think I agree with that as well. I really appreciate because when I first heard his voice, you hear Norm Macdonald, and it's hard to get past that. But I think they pulled past it pretty well.
Yeah, I agree. And I ended up liking him by the end. I think Yaphet was kind of an interesting addition. I mean, I obviously they wanted to limit the time he had on screen because it's expensive being the only CGI character on there, but it worked.
And he's not the best looking CGI character, but yeah, you don't really pay too much attention to that.
It's a humorous CGI character. I think that it works because it sets still a little humor tone to the show. It's like you could have made him more.
Yeah, I figured if he was realistic, he probably looked gross.
In this, even the same sense of him being like gelatinous, but I think making him that lime green color and everything, it worked because it's still that little bit of humor. Yeah. It's like, it's still cute and funny. It's not cartoony. It's just another blob.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think if they'd made him look realistic, he probably would have looked gross.
Yeah, they made him look a little cartoony, and that works. It's probably cheaper to do it that way, too.
Probably. That brings us to Gordon, the ship's pilot, played by Scott Grimes. What do you guys think of him?
Chris, go for it.
Honestly, he's one of my favorite characters. I mean, I've always liked Scott Grimes. He's done a lot of things. One of my favorite TV shows / miniseries was Band of Brothers. I loved his character in Band of Brothers, and I think that his story development, that was awesome. And obviously that was 10, 15 years ago now. But his character, it's fun for me. He's obviously the sense of humor on the bridge. When we first meet him, he's riding a desk because he pulled a manual override on a landing and ripped a panel off of a shuttlecraft, and he got benched for that, essentially for doing his job, but probably doing it to save a greater thing or to save a life and everything.
I was afraid they were going to go too far with the humor with him at first, but I'm glad they slowed it down.
They kind of toned down, but I was afraid of that too. But he's the needed humor. Here's your setup guy. He's the one that's always going to be, he's going to have the snappy comeback, and you need that one person in a group dynamic like that. That's kind of always, okay, Ben, you're going to love this and everything. He's the Chandler of that group.
Yeah, I could see that. The sarcastic humor.
He's probably one of my top 3 characters. I love his character dynamic, and I love his growth too, because I'm always going to go back to the pilot episode because that's fresh in my head because I just rewatched it not too long ago. He's like, when they're engaging the Krill, and we can get into them in a second too, their shields are down. He's like, we're going to have to do something here. He's like, permission to wing it, and Boris is like, permission granted. He's like, and this is what I call hugging the donkey. And he's flying by the seat of his pants with a obviously multi-billion-dollar spacecraft. And he's doing everything he can just to maintain and save the ship as best he can. And hey, trust me, I know what I'm doing here. Do it.
Yeah, he's funny, and he's I mean, you get the impression, because just like Chandler in Friends, he doesn't do well with first impressions, so you automatically assume that he's kind of an idiot, but he's good at his job and knows what he's doing.
Right. You know, the old line, "Hi, I'm Chandler. I make people uncomfortable."
Yeah.
I'm gonna try to. I always try to dig you with Chandler as much as I can.
I know. Everybody does.
I thought Gordon was a great character. I actually was really annoyed with him at first. I didn't like him in the pilot.
Yeah, see, that's where I was coming with earlier. I was having a hard time with him at first, going, "Oh my God, he's gonna go way too far with this," but they pulled it back.
Yeah, I mean, I liked where they ended up going with him, and I ended up liking him by the end quite a bit, actually. I was really nervous that this was going to be just your cardboard cutout, here's your comic relief guy. Like, he's going to be there for no other reason than to just give the zinger and then move on. And that was going to get on my nerves. But, like, I love the fact that even just a few episodes in, they really started to show a genuine sincerity. Like, you know, and you started to get the vibe that this, yeah, he was the class clown.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean he's not talented. And
he wasn't just a punchline.
Right. He's not. I like the fact that he's got history with not only Seth MacFarlane, the captain, but he knows Seth MacFarlane. Obviously, they go way back and like that. But he was also around when him and Commander Grayson Kelly were married. So he's got that dynamic. You know, he knows them. You know, he knows Ed. Ed Mercer, the captain, he knows him really well, but he was also around when they were married, and he went through all the hardships of the divorce and the cheating and everything with the two of them, and was there through the breakup, and was still there for Ed through all the problems that he had. And you know, the line, I can't remember the exact line, but when she's coming on the bridge for the first time around that, and it's like, yep, what a bitch.
Yeah, I like the fact that he's sort of kind of doing the bro code thing and sticking with Ben and kind of trying to like. And one of the shield. I mean, it's not Ben. Ed. You know, he's trying to kind of shield Ed from her being there. You know,
right?
Because he knows it's difficult for him.
And the episode where him and Captain Mercer go undercover as the Krill, and they've got the cloaks. You know, they're on the Krill ship and everything. I think for me, that's the episode where he went from being the straight comedy relief setup guy to. This is somebody that you can really trust. He's the dependable one. He, like you said, he's the bro code. He's the one that you're always going to be able to count on. Yeah, if you need a go-to guy, he's it.
Yeah, that's the episode that I started liking him. Was that like, because I was afraid that, like I said, I was afraid he was just going to be
waiting for him to do a joke or something that was going to set up and ruin their disguise.
I thought he was just going to be some hollow character who's just used as punchlines and just is annoying. But yeah, that's the episode that it made.
But having to save those kids and doing everything they can do to basically save those kids and kind of, you know, protect them, even though they're going to kill them the first chance they get, doesn't mean that they're not still kids.
Right.
And he realized that. He's like, I'm going to do everything I can to help you save these kids from the destruction.
And what I like about his character is I love the fact that there's a vulnerability to him where, you know, he's the class clown, but he's also sort of like the insecure, probably really deeply emotional person who just uses humor to sort of hide the fact that he does care deeply. And he's probably the kind of guy that easily gets his feelings hurt.
And I like that episode.
And has a lot of passion about things, you know, and that's the episode where I think you start to see that.
And that's that episode also, I like the ending of that episode. Even though he saved all the kids still had it in their mind that, you know, that they're responsible, and so all of the kids, everybody that he saved, ended up hating him, though. It's like they didn't even know that he was the way.
No matter, and that goes back to no matter what we do, we're not going to change them.
Yep.
Right.
His storyline, actually, I hope that they actually develop his, maybe like you were saying, maybe it's like the emotional kid or the kid that uses humor for almost like a defense mechanism. That's something that I think they can do in season 2, is develop him a little bit more, get a little bit more of his backstory. And that'd be a really good episode, I think.
I'm sure they'll go there.
I feel like if you find his, this is my prediction, but I feel like once they get into his backstory, there's going to be something really crazy tragic in it.
Something really deep he's going to have the pulling at the heartstring moment in his backstory that's going to make you go, oh.
Yeah, I'm sure they're
Okay.
probably it's going to be revealed like why he uses humor as a defense mechanism, and maybe we'll see that incident happen.
I hope so. I think that'd be a really
That'd
good
be great.
tie.
That'd be a powerful episode. I'd like that. So that leaves us with John, who is the navigator slash engineer, and the doctor.
Let's hit the doctor up first. Penny, was it Penny Johnson? Yeah.
Yeah, she's the actress. The character was Dr. Claire Finn.
Thank you. Again, I wrote down actors' names, but I didn't
Yeah, I just remember
recognize them.
Dr. Finn, and I just knew her more recently. I knew her because my wife and I used to watch Castle.
Yeah, and
Good
I
show.
was, yeah, great show. And I mean, do you remember the episode where she? I mean, this is what I was going to relate to her. Do you remember her first episode on Castle, like where she came in and she was known as this hard nosed, kind of by the book,
Yeah, the by the
hard
book
ass
captain.
character and everything. I was expecting that in Dr. Finn and everything, but her compassion is wonderful.
Right. What was her
Yeah.
What was her name in Castle? Was it Chief? Was it Gates?
Yes, yeah, they called it because they called her Iron Gates
Iron
because she
Gates.
was
Yeah.
so tough and mean and basically steadfast like iron. They called her Iron Gates. Yeah,
She still.
but her character development, her progression from being a hard nosed by the book to the end of the show, and you saw her, develop and accept Castle and Beckett's relationship. Where she ended that show is, I feel like, where Dr. Finn kind of picks up. Like she kind of maybe had that hard nose way through med school, but now she's on the ship, and she even tells Mercer, it's like Mercer's like, you've got DNA sequencing and psychology and all that. What are you doing here on a mid-level ship? He's like, well, I feel like I go where I'm needed and where I can be the most used. And he's like, so you're going to be here when I screw up? And she's like, I didn't say that, but that's really what she's doing.
Right.
I think she's sort of the quintessential mom. Like, I think that's
Yeah.
one of the things that's so great about her character is not just the fact that she is a mom. What I'm talking about is the fact that, like, she's a single mother of these two kids. So she totally has that ability to have that mom voice, where she has that,
Right.
that badass, like,
And that's
no,
funny.
no, you put that down. You do what I say.
Right. That's funny
What
that
I
you
say
mentioned that,
goes.
because that's exactly where I was thinking. She still has that kind of the Captain Gates from Castle, like, authoritative voice, but she has the
Right.
compassion of a mom who can tell somebody to shut up, sit down, and she's going to take care of you, kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah.
She's the one that's going to look at, basically, we got like one of the toughest characters. Bordis, obviously, is this outwardly tough, straight by the book, deep voice, almost no humor on that. She could tell him to sit down and shut up and around that, and he's going to do it.
But what I like about it is the fact that she doesn't do it in an overly sappy way. You never question for a minute that she doesn't have the warmth and the compassion. But there's also kind of a no nonsense thing that's just always there, where it's like, yeah, she cares, but she's also not going to, like, put up with people's crap. At some point, she's going to feel bad for you. She's going to put her arm around you. She's going to comfort you, but she's going to give you 5 minutes, and then she's going to tell you to suck it up and deal with it.
Right. And she does that in the second episode where, the captain and Kelly, are taken away to the zoo and everything. And Yulara's in charge now.
Oh, yeah.
And she's like, I'm going to be here to support you, but I can't tell you what to do. You're going to have to figure that out on your own. You're in command here, not me. I'll help you, but I'm not going to do it for you. And that's the mom thing.
Yeah, I
Right
like
there.
it. I think it was fantastic. The only thing that I was nervous about at first was in the first couple episodes. I think it was pretty much gone by the second or third episode. But early on, I wasn't really sure what to think of her because she felt kind of awkward going on the away missions. Like, there's something about her that just seemed uncomfortable, almost like she was uncomfortable on set or something. I don't know. And
That could be, and I think that maybe
she's
has to do with her. Maybe it has to do with her previous history works. Is that she's done very serious shows, like Castle. There's a little bit of humor in there, but it's a cop show. It's a serious show, and then even her time on Deep Space Nine, and she is also on 24 as well. She maybe the fact that when she acts on screen, because she's also done some voice acting too. She's the voice of Amanda Waller in a lot of the DC animated stuff. But when she's on screen, it's a very serious tone to it. Now she's on a show that Seth MacFarlane's created. It's like, it's almost like, how do I get my own humor into this? How do I be funny?
I don't
how do I
necessarily
relate
know
to
if it was the funny aspect of it. I think it was more of just how how do you move and how do you act like on an away mission and everything else? I mean, there's differences, you know. You don't necessarily move the same way like a cop does going through the streets of New York or something. I
Right.
mean, like,
The problem I saw, and the way you say that is like in the first episode, and when she's on the away mission, she's armed. She's got a phaser. And I don't know if that bugs me that she's a doctor. I've always have a hard time arming medics and everything, you know, or doctor personnel, because I think that they should be all about saving lives and not taking them.
well, and that's actually weird because in Star Trek they actually don't arm the doctors.
Right, exactly.
Like McCoy was never armed. I mean,
McCoy, yeah, he had science. He had medicine. That was his weapon.
Well, the one thing I always liked the most about McCoy, out of all the doctors in all of Star Trek, was McCoy always had this like fierce passion for saving people, and he didn't give a crap what was going on. Like,
yes,
all the politics, all the
it's all about
else that was going on. He didn't give a shit.
It's
all
all
like,
about
this person's bleeding. I'm gonna do this.
It's all about life for him. It doesn't matter who you are or not. That the life comes first.
Yeah, I still think she's an amazing character. I think, in particular, the one episode that stood out to me the most was, I mean, they did some interesting things with her on that episode where the Rob Lowe alien showed up.
The reptilian.
Yeah, but I really thought that her standout episode was the one where she got kidnapped.
Oh yeah, where her and Isaac and the kids crash on the planet and she gets kidnapped.
Yeah, I mean, that showed
deep.
a lot about not just how strong she was, but how like resourceful she was. All that.
And then it goes to the doctor thing about saving lives. Doctors will always tell you in a situation when it comes to saving lives, the first life you save is your own. And that's what she did. She's like, the first life the only way I can save my kids and protect them and everything like that is I have to survive this first.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where you see the resourcefulness. It's all, the mission is there to get back to her kids and protect them, but she can't do that unless she survives. And to go with your point about being the mom and having the mom voice and around that, she is the elder character on that bridge and around that. She's the oldest, I wouldn't say by far, but she's definitely the senior statesman on the bridge, and it shows, and that plays right into the mom character.
And I really like that because it's like what you talked about before, like why is she on the ship? It actually really reminded me a lot of Shepard Book from Firefly. The one thing I really loved about his character on the pilot was Kaylee's pointed out to him, like, you're not actually looking for where things are going, you're looking at ships. You don't care where they go, you're actually more interested in the trip. And I always thought that was really fascinating, that he was sort of at a point in his life where it didn't matter where he went. He was just looking for like the most interesting journey. And I feel like that's kind of what's going on with her, is like, she's on the ship because it feels like where she needs to be.
Right.
That's kind of cool.
So what do you guys think about the helmsman?
It took a long time for me to develop a feel for him, because I think he was just kind of like a blah, whatever. And that's part of it. And I think that comes out in the later episodes where they discovered that he's a genius, that he should be doing something more than being the navigator helmsman. Is that, that's why they put him, they kind of goad him into becoming the engineer and using his full potential. It took me a long time to feel him out, because I don't think there was any substance to him. And now we know why at the end. Yeah. He had the longest developing character arc of the whole first season, and it played out well in the end. And because maybe it was like one of those, like, okay, we're 8 episodes in, we don't know anything about him. It's like, okay, we got to do something about it. And they could have easily just thrown it at it. It's like, oh yeah, by the way, we know you're a genius. You're now in charge of, the engineering.
Yeah. What I liked about that is that he got the job over Yaphet, and that whole situation and how that turned.
Oh,
yeah, that was interesting.
Right.
Yeah, but he did it well, and this also plays into the growth and development of the characters, that he struggled. It's like he didn't want it. He rejected it. It's like, I'm going to be here, but I'm not going to like it. And he goes to the extreme with it. Doesn't work out. It's like, okay, wait a minute. I've got to learn to trust here. I got to let them. I got to trust them. They've got to trust me. Thing.
I think I agree totally. I think he was a very bland character until the end. And that's kind of the biggest drawback I had with the character. And in a way, I feel kind of bad, because I wonder if he'd have seemed as bland if he hadn't been next to some of the other characters. Like, some of the others are so interesting and they stand out so much.
Yeah,
he was a very non-dynamic character in a mix with a whole bunch of other dynamic.
Do you think he may have been? Yeah, do you think he may have been better served if he would have started out as maybe an engineer in that room? Because I feel like, yeah, with him being next to
No, not
Scott Grimes.
necessarily, but I do think they would have done a much better job had they done that episode earlier in the season. Like, I feel like that episode should have happened more like episode 4 or 5, because it's too long with him not standing out. And I would even be okay with him getting it later in the season, like it actually happened, if they'd have hinted at it more or foreshadowed it. Like, I think it would have been,
or if he had tried it in like if he had tried like an engineering spot in like episode 4 and 5 and it didn't work out.
well, I don't
Whatever,
mean
and then
that.
came
What I
back.
mean is like, I think it would have been really amazing if they'd have foreshadowed his genius, and then had
Early
like that be
on.
like a very, very subtle thing where, like, because I think how cool would it have been if there was a moment where suddenly they desperately needed something to work, and he's just like, move over, and then like he messed with
Yeah,
a panel, everything
okay.
fired to life, and then after they were past the crisis, they'd be like, how did you know how to do that, or how did you know that chip was, like, the right one?
And he just kind of
And
laughs
then,
it off and says, like, oh, it's something I picked up along the way.
yeah, but what I was thinking is, instead of doing the generic laugh it off thing, he actually would be like, oh shit, I was supposed to do what? Like, where
Yeah.
he could play it as like genuine ignorance, like,
Oh,
oh
it's
my
like, oh my
god,
God.
like I just
I got-
totally lucked
Yeah.
out.
Yeah, I got
Yeah.
lucky.
Because then, when this episode happens, everybody could be like, oh crap, he actually did know what he was doing the whole time.
Well, they could. I feel like they
Because you
could
could
have
have
done
had a running gag of that and built up to it.
True.
And it would have been way more interesting.
Yeah.
Because
Okay.
then he would have been the dumb lucky guy up until his real character trait was revealed.
Well, I was going to say that another way they could do it is anytime they have like or asking questions on the bridge and somebody doesn't know the answer, he just kind of like, as he's navigating, he just like shouts the answer or just says the answer like nonchalant. And if they would have just done that like
Or
once in a
under his
while,
breath. Yeah, the same way. It's like, oh God. I
yeah,
can't believe
like
you
how
didn't
he
know
just
that.
keeps answering these things, and that could be, it's something. But yeah, they didn't do anything. It was just like all of a sudden, bam, he's a
Right.
genius.
And the thing I wondered about him, like maybe the actor himself wasn't at the comfort level of acting extremely at this, because I was looking at like his past works, and what I found is that he really hadn't been in a whole lot, and that this is kind of his first breakout thing. He was actually receptionist and on the Family Guy studio, and then he only did voice acting for the Cleveland show. And this is, that's really his foray into the industry. And so thank you, God, long week.
Yeah, four-way.
Into the industry. So maybe it's, he had to develop not only as a character, but he also needed to develop as an actor before he was even comfortable taking on a storyline of his own. And that's something that maybe he and Seth MacFarlane worked out on their own.
Well, I mean, I think this is probably like a lot of people's fault. I mean, I hate to use the word fault, but I'm just saying, like, I think there's a lot of factors that led up to it. But if there's only one character that's uninteresting out of a cast of this many on a first season show, that's amazing.
Yeah, you pulled a really good one getting the cast together, and even the guest appearances throughout the show. I'm thinking of a couple episodes in particular. The guest appearances, you can tell that, again, this goes back to Seth MacFarlane having his fingers or hands into different areas, that I think that he pulled some really good guests.
Favor, man. Called in every favor.
But it worked. I mean, I love, Charlize Theron playing her role was really good. And even the subtle, why am I blanking on his name right now? Liam Neeson.
That is my favorite cameo of the whole season.
It was awesome.
It's just that little bit from Liam Neeson. I really
and it's a whole little mini of after back-to-back episodes, a little mini A Million Ways to Die in the West, reunion. And it was like, okay. I don't know. If Giovanni Ribisi shows up in an episode, though, I'm gonna call no. I'm gonna be like, no, sorry, don't do it. Please don't do it, and please don't dance either.
I don't mind him so much.
Spider-Man 3 has taught us anything.
I don't mind him so much. It's just he's. It just depends on how they write him, I think, and just tell him.
I would like to see him as. I would like to actually, if he's going to show up in the show, have him as the. I'm going to say this, Star Trek reference. Have him as a red shirt. Have him as the expendable guy on a major away team that just gets, says like 2 lines and then gets popped. Yeah. That's fine with me.
Shoot him for saying unobtainium.
There you go.
I recently discovered that that's actually a real thing.
Unobtainium?
I can't believe that there's something they actually named unobtainium.
Did they name it after the Avatar?
No, apparently it existed before, but but it just sounds so like I don't care if it is real. You
It
can't
sounds
name
so
something that
fake.
sounds so fake in a big movie and not have people just think it's the stupidest thing ever.
Well, you guys have expressed your dislike for Avatar so much, but we could go on that forever too. So
I could go on that for a while.
yeah.
Seriously, it's like the equivalent of wearing blackface. Like you
Sure.
go up to an alien culture dressed as them, they know you're clearly not one of them. I mean,
Right.
That movie.
And what do you guys think about Rob Lowe's character? I mean, regardless of his storyline of how it's potential that his character created the infidelity between the two of them, what do you think of him as actually just as a character alone?
I mean, he was a fine side character. It's just, I didn't mind the episode either when they, everybody like started to like him. I actually thought that was funny when Seth MacFarlane just like kept wanting to like be around him all the time.
Yeah, I thought that was really...
I thought the actual like thing with his culture, the pheromone thing, was actually a really interesting and unique idea.
And it was a good way to, I mean, it was a very direct way to kind of, like I said, wrap up that whole story of like the infidelity. And it's like, well, was it the pheromones? Was it not the pheromones? I guess we'll never know. But it gave you a plausible explanation that maybe she's not just this bad person that cheated on him. Maybe it was the pheromones. As soon as Captain Mercer accepted the fact that maybe it was, it kind of put my mind at ease. It's like, okay, he's a little bit more, and I think that was the final. It's like he's finally come with full acceptance of this happened and it's over and we're moving on from it.
It really did seem like it gave them a nice peace, like not necessarily a closure, but like a peace where like, okay, they're not going to harp on it anymore. Like doesn't necessarily mean they'll get together. Maybe they will, maybe they won't, but at least they're past it.
And that's what I liked about his character though, is that he was at the beginning. They show him in the pilot. You know who he is, and then he's
in the pilot.
Yeah, and he's addressed in his character is addressed, and that situation is addressed later. And I feel like that's all they need with him in that. They didn't need any more than that. They didn't have to dwell on it anymore. It's just like it's over.
And it was good that they didn't do it like episode 3 or 4. They pushed it farther back in the season so that it took that storyline of the infidelity and the divorce really high, dropped it off for a while, brought it back, and then kind of put the cap on it.
That was good, and Rob Lowe actually did a great job in the part.
Yeah.
Oh, it was fabulous. I thought his portrayal of that character was great. I mean, you probably could have put a couple other people in there; they would have done all right. But I always liked Rob Lowe. I like the characters that he plays, and I think he did an amazing job with it.
I'll be interested to see who they bring in for season 2.
Yeah, I was reading that article, like I said, and there's a couple of people they mentioned. There's going to be at least one more regular character on, and I can't remember who's playing the character. But it's the way I'm thinking is that it's going to be the navigator / helmsman, Lamar's replacement, because now that he's in engineering, they're going to need somebody else on the bridge. So I think they're bringing in something for that.
But that brings up something else I wanted to point out. As far as the Star Trek references, I've been really wanting to make this point, but I wanted to make sure we got through all the characters first. It's very obvious that this is a loving homage to Star Trek The Next Generation in pretty much every way. And what I really, really love about it is the fact that it gets several things that made Star Trek special right. The big questions about science fiction and humanity, the genuine compassion the cast has for each other, the characters have for each other, how inviting the future looks. It looks like a place that you would actually really want to be. You want to come and hang out, in this gorgeous place. It's a place where you wish you could spend time. But in a weird way, I also feel like this is sort of borderline fan fiction. It feels more like this is his version of what he wanted to do with certain characters, because they're all clearly the same characters from Next Generation, but it's almost like he's doing them his way. Going down the line here, John, for instance, is clearly Geordi. He started as a helmsman and now he's an engineer. Bortus is your Worf, obviously. But Alara was very interesting to me because I really feel like she is his attempt to reboot Tasha Yar. Because for those who aren't familiar, Tasha Yar was she was actually the head of security. She was the original head of security on the Enterprise.
Yeah, then she got killed by a tar monster.
She got killed by the tar monster.
Okay.
Which, by the way,
that's Denise Crosby. She went on to star in B movies.
The ever-loving crap out of me when I was a kid.
See, I'm gonna have to go back and watch that episode.
Like, I remember watching that episode when it first aired as a kid, and that tar monster just scared the shit out of me. Like, mostly because like it was scary enough as it was, but then it killed off the main character, which at the time no one had seen. I mean, this was way before Game of Thrones. This is way before any of that was people were used to it.
Right. When now, like between Game of Thrones and even like Walking Dead, where you can actually look at the main cast and look at them and go, you know what? None of you are safe.
Right.
None of you are
No,
safe. Anytime, any
for
episode,
this to happen,
knock you off. Yeah.
for this to happen on a Star Trek, in a mainstream show in the early
Yeah.
90s,
That's
late 80s actually in this case,
Yeah,
was just mind blowing. But the thing is that Tasha Yar, her character didn't work. You know, they wanted her to be this, you know, really strong character who was this woman who is very clearly qualified and able to be head of security on the flagship of the Enterprise and do all these amazing things. But her character never came across right. They gave her this really, really heavy backstory where she grew up on this planet where it was just chaos, and you know there were gangs and murderers and rapists around every corner, and she scraped and survived and somehow made her way to Starfleet. But it never came across in her character, and when she tried to talk about her history, it was awkward
and forced.
And
because I think the problem that they did there is that they gave you too much of her backstory.
No, the problem is they had her just tell you.
There was no subtle hints at it. Yeah, there was no subtle hints at her backstory, or like the scene where she's in trouble or something like that. She does something and just like, you know, it weighs heavy on her. That you develop a sense that there's something in their backstory, and you'll get to it later. It's like, no, this is, you know, this happened to me. I handled it this way because of this. She gave you the explanation for it.
And it was really strange because she would say it so casually. Like she, I mean, this is stuff that you would think would cause horrible trauma. And she says it like she's talking about going to the store, where she'd be like, oh yeah, when I was a kid and we were running away from the rape gangs, that, you know, it's something related to the conversation. And I'm like, whoa, back up. What?
Yeah, it was like, too much in your face.
Holy, wow. Yeah. Like, you don't just drop that and walk away. Like, but I feel like, and honestly, there's a whole lot of other stuff that went on with this too. The actress wasn't really happy with the way things were going with her character. You know, there's a lot of that I don't want to get into. It's just, you know, it's on the internet. Look it up. But I think Alara is really his attempt at trying to make that character work.
And that's fine. If he wants to take homage
really pulling it off,
or inspiration from something and make it better, I'm all for it.
And I would even argue that Gordon is actually his attempt at rebooting Tom Paris's character from Voyager, because they're very, very similar. They're both,
that one I see. I can agree with you on that. I remember watching a little bit more of Voyager more recently than anything else, and I think you're right on that one.
And I see where he's coming from, because there are a lot of characters in Star Trek that I think actually had way more potential than they ever ended up using. And it's actually kind of cool to see someone take inspiration and, like, you know, be like, hey, here's where he could have gone. I just wanted to make the point, because like the longer I looked at the Orville, the more I was like, you know, this actually feels like his way of saying, damn, it sucks you guys didn't go there with the story, but I'm going to go there.
What do you guys think about like ship design and set design, like the planets that they go to and, you know, the ship designs and everything? There was one obvious thing that I wanted to point out to Ben and everything, because I know that Demolition Man's one of his favorite things, but in episode 1 on episode 2, the research,
do you know how to use the 3 seashells?
Yeah, well, did that pull up? The research facility in the first episode that they go to is actually the same building that they use for the San Angeles Police Department in Demolition Man.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, I think they gave it a paint job. It's red in the Orville, and I think it's white or another color in Demolition Man. But I saw that. I was reading, like I said, backstory, and I was like, Ben's gonna like that, because, you know, if he can tie anything to Demolition Man.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to throw in the Demolition Man Blu-ray and then rewatch the episode again and see. But
it's very angled linear building. But I was mainly focused on, like, the hardest thing to do is with an homage and around that is not to straight copy, because we know that any kind of influence is going to influence something else in a creative way. And you guys have talked about this. The ship designs, especially the Orville and the other ships within the Union, I like the look. I think that it's very Trekky. Like, you could have put these ships easily in the Federation Starfleet and it would work. But I think that they're very unique in their own way.
I really enjoy the designs, everything, pretty much everything as far as the artistic direction, especially the interiors of the ship. I think the interiors of the ship are gorgeous. I really love the uniforms. I think the uniforms are very cool, and the fact that they feel sort of Star Trek, but very clearly their own thing.
I would have been more comfortable with these uniforms being used in the new Star Trek Discovery than the direction they went.
These actually seem more like a proper precursor to
right.
Yeah.
And the one of the lines I saw and everything when reading about this and everything, that this show, the Orville, is more Star Trek than Star Trek. They were talking about Star Trek Discovery. This show is more Star Trek than Star Trek is, and I'm like, that is just as soon as Seth MacFarlane saw that headline, he's got to be going, yes, I did it. You know, and people are talking positive about this show. It didn't get great, you know, critic reviews, but it's also the highest rated debut of a show on Fox since Empire, and Empire's been out for 3 or 4 seasons now. It's the highest rated debut.
What I find really strange is the fact that the critics all reviewed the show based on only 2 to 3 episodes. They were essentially given the first 3 episodes of the show and then told to review the whole series. And I find that very odd because it seems like it would make a lot more sense to me to wait until the whole season's out and then review the season.
That happens with every show, though. I mean, you're lucky if you don't get canceled review after a pilot, you know.
Well, yeah, but I'm just saying it's kind of a silly system.
There's been a lot,
you know, pilots are notoriously horrible. I mean, like even the best shows in history, most of them have terrible pilots.
But I think this one kind of breaks the mold on it. I wasn't over the top thrilled with it. It didn't like, oh yes, I'm going to watch this right away. But it definitely hooked me enough to be like, this has got potential to be a good show.
I didn't hate it.
I found the critical response to this very, very odd.
Yeah,
because in kind of the whole wake of basically the whole Star Trek Discovery versus Orville thing, it was really strange to me that the critics were so positive of Discovery, yet so dismissive of the Orville.
I wonder if that's the Seth MacFarlane influence, though.
Well, and it could be because critics notoriously really hate Seth MacFarlane, and I don't know why.
I don't know why either. I think he's brilliant in his own way. I'm not going to ask
mixed feelings about him, but the point is like
to direct like the next Indiana Jones movie or anything. But you know, he's got what he does. He does it. Talent. He does it well. He does it. When he's got an idea and he executes brilliantly.
Right. But I have noticed that there is a weird trend amongst critics to really dog on his work in a way that I feel is very undeserved. And I don't know why. I really don't get this one. This one's one of those strange discrepancies where the critic score and the user review score are just drastically different. And not just for this.
They're night and day.
Not just for this, but for Discovery as well. It was the exact opposite. I mean, like the regular fan response from the Orville was insanely popular, insanely positive.
Insanely down on Discovery.
And
I honestly think,
as a Star Trek fan,
that kind of hurts, but you're kind of looking at it going, yeah, I agree with it.
Well, here's kind of where I land on it. And this is sort of complicated, but I'm going to try my best to articulate this. I don't hate Discovery. Because there's a lot of people that just, you know, kind of are just like, Discovery's the worst thing ever, you know, end quote, and then that's it. And it leads to this very toxic atmosphere of us versus them. You either love it or you hate it, you know, like, and there's a lot of people that are loyal to Star Trek that suddenly will double down on, no, Discovery's really great, give it a chance, simply because they're mad at fans being negative. And I understand that. I've actually seen that in several fandoms where fandoms turn toxic and you get a group of people that just really start talking about how awful everything's become.
And, I get that way with Star Wars, so I know where you're coming from.
Right. And it sucks because you don't want people to be doom and gloom about it. I mean, people said some horrible things about Star Trek. Star Wars Empire Strikes Back when it came out. I mean, sometimes it just takes time for people to kind of get on board with things. So I don't want to say that I'm solidly in one camp or the other. I have mixed feelings about it. My problem is I'm not going to be one of the haters, but I'm also not going to be one of the supporters. Because to me, Discovery fails at being Star Trek. And I'm not saying that people didn't do a great job at making the show and putting a lot of effort into it. And clearly people care. But everything I've seen is that I'm going to say that.
Do you think that
Let
Discovery would be
me
better if it wasn't Star Trek?
Yes, I think Discovery would have been a great series had it not been Star Trek. If this had been called something else completely, I think a lot
Even
more
if you just
people.
called it Discovery and took every reference to Star Trek out of it and just
Yeah,
let it
I think
stand
a
on its
lot
own.
more people would have actually enjoyed this quite a bit. The problem is that it's not a bad story. It's not badly done. I mean, the production values are incredible. The problem is that it doesn't fit in with the ideology of Star Trek,
It
and it
doesn't
doesn't
live up
fit
to
in.
it doesn't live up to the Trek name.
Well, it's not a matter of living up to the Trek name. It's a matter of the fact that it doesn't fit the Trek universe. It doesn't suit canon. It's very strange
Oh,
because
okay.
the thing is because a lot of people get really worked up when you criticize Discovery, and they just be like, "Oh, haters, you don't have to watch it, just go away." And I don't understand. I feel like I just want them to hear my rational explanation, which is it has nothing to do with the quality of Discovery as a show. Discovery is a very high quality show. My problem is the fact that it is written so far outside of Star Trek's story that it feels like it can't be Star Trek because it's just so foreign and strange. I'm trying to think of a good example, but it would be like imagine an episode of Law and Order where Peter Griffin suddenly came in and had a whole episode about how he was abusing his wife, and they would have the same Family Guy style jokes and animation in with a live action, but
Right.
it would be the same show.
Right.
That's how out of place Discovery feels in Star Trek.
Well, from
Because
what I
and it's
really
not
experienced though with Discovery is it feels like a space war, and that's not what Star Trek is about.
right, and it's not even about like certain things people complain about. Because a lot of people talk about like, oh, it's not the utopian vision, and it's not Gene Roddenberry's thing. Okay, look, if you want to take series in a different direction, you do have to grow and change over time. I'm not opposed to them
But over
trying new
time,
things, but
not straight out.
right. But and again, I'm not opposed to that. What I'm opposed to is the fact that this is supposed to take place 10 years before the events of the original Star Trek with Kirk,
That's it.
and
Only 10 years.
yeah, it's 10 or 12 years before Kirk.
Wow, that's a lot to change in a 10-year gap.
Exactly. And that's my
That's
point.
insane. That's insane.
Their setup is so strange, especially because we have seen 10 years before Kirk. We have footage of Captain Pike captaining the Enterprise 10 years prior. So we know what things look like in that timeline. And okay, I'm not even saying they have to do cardboard sets or anything, but what I'm saying is that as a fan who's just looking at this from a story perspective, it's just very, very bizarre that you take something that looks way farther in the future with technology way beyond, because they have full holographic interfaces on par with holodeck technology. There's so many things they're doing that aren't available until past Next Generation.
Right.
There's so many things that don't fit with Starfleet.
Yeah, but today's audience is not going to get behind anything that doesn't look like that. I think
well,
they know
and
that.
Again, if you're talking just art direction, that's fine. But my point is that from a story standpoint, the story elements don't fit either.
Right. It should be way further in the future.
Part of this, would work if you, and that's what's frustrating is if the Discovery had even been set past Voyager, then some of this could really work. Because I like the idea that maybe the Federation's starting to break down. Maybe they're not as harmonious as they were before. Maybe mankind is starting to slip back into their warlike tendencies, and this tension on the ship between the crew members would make a lot more sense. But so close, it really comes down to the fact that it's trying to fit a square peg in a round hole. And if they just hadn't tried to do that, if they hadn't tried to make it a prequel, it would have worked. And it would have been so much better. But as a fan looking at it now, it's like, but it can't be that because this is this and that's that.
Right.
And it feels like bad fan fiction because it's like a writer writing something that they clearly don't understand.
Right. For like the casual watcher like me, if I was to pick this up, or even somebody that's never seen Star Trek before, to watch this and go, oh, this is 10 years before, oh, that original one and everything. Okay, I kind of know about it, but they watched like this full season of it. They're like, oh, okay, so this is supposed to lead into original, Shatner, Kirk, and everything, they're going to go try to watch that and then go, well, this doesn't make any sense and this doesn't feel right. Or even
nothing adds up.
Or even if they skip that and went to Next Generation and go, this doesn't fit, this doesn't lead up to it, this doesn't do anything like that. They'd have to, try almost every single series. Like you said, you got to Voyager and go, okay, this is close, but God, it would make a lot more sense if we put it after it.
Yeah. So, and the thing is, we've already done the prequel thing. Star Trek Enterprise did the prequel thing. And what's amazing to me is, I don't know if you guys have seen Star Trek Enterprise.
No.
But Enterprise, to me, did a far better job of making things look futuristic and more like what we'd expect out of a modern sci-fi show. Yet they put all these elements in there that are very reminiscent of the design of the original Enterprise. So they had all these little things to make you feel like this could bridge to that cardboard set in a strange way. Like, for instance, in the original Enterprise, they had these, partial walls that were like these steel grates.
Yeah.
And they ended up putting those in the Enterprise show. They just colored them different, so they weren't that yellow or red.
It was a visual cue that tied it in.
Yeah, they took time and made those attention to detail things matter, and they did a much better job. And yeah, that series didn't do very well either, but I'm just saying, I guess all I'm getting at is that, and this is a little different for me because I know a lot more about the behind the scenes than your average viewer would, but it seems very, very apparent to me that for a long time the people at Paramount and CBS have not wanted Star Trek to be Star Trek. There's just this group of people that basically really want Star Trek to feel like Star Wars, and they want to get that sweet Star Wars money. They don't want this intellectual show that's talking about this, tackling big science fiction questions, and that's doing all these things Star Trek did. That's a little too highbrow and a little too science fiction. They want a light adventure show with a light science fiction thing on it.
Right.
That has a lot of flashy stuff and action that they can make a lot more money on it. That's why they did the J.J. Abrams movies.
Right.
Where
Discovery fails is where Orville's succeeding. Is
right.
That Fox, I mean, yeah, granted they took a chance, but a true fan, and this is where the fan of Seth MacFarlane comes into play, is that he's like, okay, here's everything that was good about Star Trek and everything. Here's what, JJ did with it, with the reboot. It kind of made it more of an action-driven show with the discovery behind it or the science behind it. We're going to balance that more, and we're going to take it back to the discovery of new worlds and new species, or dealing with intergalactic problems of races, species, whatever. But it's not without the action. We're going to throw the action in there because that's what's going to happen. We're going to have the conflict. We're going to put the krill in there. There's your Klingons, and there's your the other one, the Romulans and everything. We're going to put those guys in there. But that's not what the show's about. The show's about the discovery dynamic, whether it's the new worlds. It's about people, and and that's what it's doing. So if CBS had taken the Orville approach with Discovery, I think you slide in a little bit better.
Yeah, the Star Wars. It's about family.
But that's what I'm saying. I really feel like there's just a lot of powers that be that basically really want Star Trek to be something else.
No, and I would agree with that.
And I really genuinely feel like there's a movement there that they don't really want the fans of Star Trek. They don't want these diehard fans that want their science fiction show. They're really looking for a far bigger,
way to kill off the audience that you need to get a show on its feet.
Exactly.
You gotta have.
I don't think they're realizing that they're killing a sacred deer by doing
right. You're gonna, and to like you use the parlance around that. You need the Trekkies to get a show like that off the ground. You need the fans that know everything from Shatner up to Pine and everything in between, Picard and the whole mess and everything. You need the people that know that to build a show. And the worst thing you can do, and what they did, is go, you know what? We're not making this show for them. You're going to take 80 to 90% of your audience that's going to tune in to watching about that, and slap them in the face and go, this wasn't for you. Well, if this wasn't for us, we're going to turn it off. Now you're left with a 10% of a viewing audience, and your numbers drop, and you're not going to get a season 2.
And the thing that's genuinely depressing about it is the fact that if they had just made this a different show and marketed it as a new franchise from the get-go, they could have actually drawn in a lot of the Star Trek hardcore crowd.
And given them another show to watch.
And given them another show. And then they would have championed it. And everybody would have been behind it because this would have been a much grittier sci-fi show for them. And I think a lot of them would have gotten behind it. But because there's, we live in the reboot culture. And there's a big movement to try to only use established franchise names, like with name recognition. They're so scared about launching something new, like the Orville, for instance, that they'd much rather just completely reboot an existing brand, regardless of its existing fan base, and try to make that their new sci-fi adventure thing for the general audience, than they would just launch something new. It's a shame.
Right. Well, I mean, I think maybe the Orville can hopefully change up that that thinking with season 2.
Yeah, I've got a couple of Trek fans and everything that have watched the Orville and have watched a few episodes of Discovery, like you, Derek, and they're in the same boat that we are. They love the Orville. They think it's exactly what Star Trek needed, and because it honors the original franchise. And they look at Discovery and go, God, this just sucks. This is not Star Trek. And that's my biggest fear with my backbone and my love of Star Wars is it's making me very hesitant and tentative about the Solo movie, and then obviously the way they're going with the Kenobi movie, and then not so much episode 9, because I mean that's episode 9, whatever, but it's why I was hesitant to start watching Rebels originally, because I was like, okay, this could potentially destroy it. And I'm glad I gave it a chance, because they stuck true to canon and lore, and they brought back stuff that was originally destroyed when the franchise took over and they got rid of the extended universe. They brought back stuff that was fan favorites and people, things like that. So they did it right with Rebels, and they did it also with Clone Wars as well.
All right. Well, we're getting like way off from the Orville.
We're way off, yeah. But I just want to say, I feel your pain on this level, and I'm just glad that
right.
What we're talking about, the Orville, is something that maybe can ease the wounds of Star Trek fans with watching Discovery.
Yeah.
Right.
And we should wrap this up here, because we're going a little long. But I wanted to stop or wrap up my thoughts here just by saying that I really, really hope that we're going to get a lot of years out of the Orville, and in particular, I'm hoping that we actually start getting longer seasons. I'm really hoping that the response from this is going to give them the clout to have Fox actually give them longer seasons and really throw some money behind them.
But at the same time, I don't want them to force episodes either. So if they want to
Seth
give me 12 quality,
said that he would stick to 12 to 14 episodes as long as the quality is there.
Yeah,
he doesn't want to go any farther if it's just going to be making episodes for making episodes.
Yeah, I just want there to be quality episodes. I don't care if there's 24 episodes and 12 are good. I'd rather just have the 12 solid episodes.
I'm more just concerned about them not liking the show and then just cutting the show down and down and down. And
right.
I'm sorry. When it comes to Fox, I'm still just
you don't want the Family Guy syndrome. It's like, well, we've got a few seasons ahead, 20 something episodes, and now they're down to like 8.
Yeah, right. So we'll see. We've got, and we'll even see where Star Trek Discovery goes too. So because aren't every season of that going to be different too?
That's a bit up for debate, because they have talked about making an anthology. There's a lot to that, and we could probably talk about that in another episode. Yeah, but we'll see what happens.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for episode 10 of Space Prods. We made it episode 10. I just realized that. Anyways, until next time, I'm Ben.
And I'm Derek.
And we want to thank our special guest again, Chris. Chris, we'll see you again probably next episode, depending on what we talk about.
Looking forward to come back and just give me a good subject matter, and I'm all on.
All right. I'm
up for anything. You guys know that.
Right on. Thanks for listening. We'll see you guys next time.